an automobile accident, so if everybody could please represent that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. I'd like to call to order our regular scheduled meeting for tonight. If everybody would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes. Gabriel?
Yep.
Jeff?
Yes.
Tommy?
Yes.
John Christopher?
Yes.
Erica, I'm sorry, Erica. The records will state that Craigmore and John Callahan are both absent this evening.
And those are both excused.
Thank you.
All right, next we have comments from the audience. We have one tonight. Oh shoot, sorry, I skipped something. I got new glasses, you guys gotta stay with me. All right, I need to adopt the agenda. Can I get a motion for that, please?
Motion, George.
Mr. George?
Second.
Thanks, second, Jeff. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, now, comments from the audience. We have one with Mr. Enoch. I will remind you, please keep it 3 minutes or less.
Thank you very much, members of the Board of Education. My name is Arnisi A.C. Dinoff, District Public Advocate. First of all, I'd like to say my heart goes out to the two students and their families, really their two families and their classmates who lost their life in a tragic vehicle accident, I believe last Thursday, on Rivers Mall Drive in St. Peters. It's very tragic, it's very unfortunate, and I'm not sure all the circumstances, but my heart really goes out to them. So we just prayed for them, and I hope that we keep them in our minds, and I hope that we reach out to their families and see if we can do anything for them. There's still no movement of the request from Leah Barnett. We talk about, or we have not actually talked about the case of race relations and bullying. We haven't even reached out to our expert, who you have on staff, on this issue. And so it's really heart concerning that race relations still go on in the Fort Zumwalt School District. The principal in question still has not been fired, still has not been disciplined, still has not been admonished for using the N-word in public in front of students. And I'm not exactly sure why that hasn't happened or taken place. Now, Leah Barnett has asked for this to be placed on the agenda of the Board of Education numerous times and to no avail. Hopefully the governor signs the law into place by Chuck Basie of Boone County, who's the state representative, that will mandate within 2 months of a patron or parent asking an agenda item to be put on the agenda, that'll happen. In my opinion, it's a cover-up by the administration and a joke from the administration. The N-word should never be used in our community or in our schools. And it really astonishes me that in today's day, especially the celebration of today of the emancipation of slavery, that we're still talking about this issue. The bullying conversation still has not been publicly, it's not been publicly held, but it's been in private by many of you members. This is a community issue. There should be a no tolerance policy. Stop worrying about the daily attendance rate, but start suspending those students who are the troublemakers. Why are we hiring an administrator, which is a duplication, in terms of John Schulte coming over from Wentzville into a role here in administration? The move-ups of Jeremy Moore and Mr. Myers won't happen until a year from now. And so I'm not exactly understanding why we're expending $130,000 in salary and benefits and pension for a job that really doesn't have any meaning. It's not going to happen, like I said, until July of 2023.
Your time's up, sir.
So, okay, if I could just finish up here. Why should John Schulte be hired when the opening will not take place? And then finally, I just want to touch upon one issue about the finances. We need a new eye on our finances, and I ask that you put it out for a contract bid for a new auditing firm. Thank you.
Dr. DeBrey, we have our recognition.
First item of recognition for the Board of Education, Henry St. Pierre, who oversees our Grow Your Own program, is going to introduce to you our Grow Your Own teacher recipient this year. So we're excited for that. Henry.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Bray. Good evening, members of the board. I'd like to invite Jacob Stratman to come on up here to the podium. I'm going to talk a little bit, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jacob and introduce him. But you know, we've had our Fort Zumwalt Education Foundation around since about 2005, and the goal of the foundation is to help recruit and incentivize our own Fort Zumwalt graduates to come back and teach in Fort Zumwalt in areas of high need. The foundation provides kids, money's all privately raised, provides our recipients with a forgivable loan to help defray and pay for costs of college. In exchange for that forgivable loan, kids agree to come back and teach in Fort Zumwalt in an area of high needs. We have about 15 teachers who have been selected, gone through the program, and are currently teaching in Fort Zumwalt. Another 5 or 6 are in college presently, and it's my pleasure and honor to introduce to you the most recent recipient of the Education Foundation Grow Your Own Teacher Award, recent West High graduate, Jacob Stratman. And Jacob is here tonight to tell you a little bit about what his plans are for the future. So, Jacob.
Thank you. First off, I just want to say thank you to the Fort Zumwalt Education Foundation for this amazing opportunity. And like he said, I recently graduated from Fort Zumwalt West High this year. I look forward to returning to Fort Zumwalt District after completing my degree in secondary education, engineering, and technology at the University of Central Missouri.
Any questions for Jacob?
Sorry, it was short, but.
Congratulations. Just deserve a hand. That's for sure. Good area to be in.
Hi, Jacob. I'm Laura Wagner. I'm going to take your picture a lot the next few years.
That's awesome. I think it's worthwhile mentioning our Grow Your Own Teacher program that's been around for so many years. Provides $32,000 over 4 years to attend a 4-year university. And then our own students come back to fill positions in high needs areas. So it's really exciting. I think we have, Henry, remind me, we have 12 or 13 teachers that have returned to us
Yeah,
now.
we're up to about 15.
15 that are back teaching, that have gone through with the support of the foundation. No taxpayers' money's involved in that. That's all raised by the foundation. And we have, what, another
About
10?
6 in college right
6?
now. Yep,
Okay.
yep. And Jacob will be number 7.
Very good. Fantastic. Congratulations again, Jacob. Next item is a presentation for the Board of Education. We have 2 new members to the board, and with some of the most recent tragedies that have taken place around the country in various schools, we thought it appropriate to have a little presentation for the board and the audience on the safety and security measures that we already have in place to try to keep these tragedies from happening in our own school district. So Jeremy oversees our school resource officers, and he oversees our safety procedures in the buildings, works with principals directly. He's got with him Jake Knoffel, our SRO at North High School, and between the 2 of them, they're going to talk to you a little bit about what we've got in place and what we do every day to keep our kids safe. Jeremy?
Okay, all right, thanks, Dr. DeBray. I'll give a quick plug for the foundation. So on July 8th at Bear Creek will be our annual golf tournament that we'll have. So any of you interested in playing the golf tournament, we'd love to have you out there. We haven't done a Wing Haven this year, to be Bear Creek. Jake actually is at North High as an SRO, but Jake, you were a West High grad.
Yeah, West High.
West High, yeah, so a West High grad as well. With,
Been there.
Just
2 years ago.
Couple short years, yes.
Yeah.
I saw you walk across the stage, I'm sure.
Yeah, first class from there, yeah.
Oh, all right, yeah. Well, appreciate Jake's.
We didn't have grow your own police officer back then.
Well, yeah, we'll work on that next year. Yeah. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with the board this evening. I know Dr. Bray shared the PowerPoint that we provide to our staff annually, active intruder training, and Jake's going to talk a little bit about that here in a bit. But I wanted to just kind of give an overview. I know that he had sent something out to our community here recently, like he said, in light of the events down in South Texas. But you know, truly kind of day to day, the things that happen within the school probably goes a little bit more in depth with just, you know, simple, not simple, but things that we kind of take for granted, I think, oftentimes. Within our buildings, all of our buildings essentially are under really a lockout day in and day out. We have our electronic buzzers that we have at every one of our buildings, that so visitors are to be buzzed in. There's a protocol that they have to go to identify themselves to come in. Outside of that, buildings are essentially, like I said, in a lockout. Doors are to remain locked throughout those school hours. We do have, I'm sure some of you have noticed, I bring this to our board meetings, but several years ago we have, there was talk with law enforcement, and would have been probably back during the Sandy Hook time, of possibly looking into like a hot button system, which would be an alert that would go immediately to law enforcement. So it would be a button that would be installed like in our offices, so that if something were to happen, and you know, could notify that. What we had kind of run into, and this is again in cooperation with talking with our local law enforcement, chiefs of police, and our SROs, that, you know, it was it's a fixed button, so it's in one spot in the office. Whereas what we got with Jeff Smith over at St. Charles County Emergency Management Operations, and Jeff, you know, worked through actually the mobile radio, which this radio is, maybe doesn't have all the bells and whistles that our law enforcement guys have, but it does have direct access to 911 emergency response. Goes over, all this was coordinated through Jeff Smith over at and who is still there at St. Charles County Emergency Management. So it has a button that one of the things that may happen when you get an overload, such as a crisis situation, active intruder, where you've got the cell phone, a lot of cell phone usage that's going on in one particular area, they can kind of shut that down. So this enables someone within the building, presumably an administrator, that can get that button and get assistance there. So we have those in every one of our buildings. We have one here. We have one in our transportation department too. So that was something that we put in several years ago. Things I know that you're aware of, but we have security guards in all of our high school campuses. We have SROs, all our comprehensive 4 high schools, our 4 middle schools, and then our alternative high school. And then we have our DARE officers that rotate throughout the school year doing the DARE program at our elementary schools. So some total of about 14, I think, resource officers between St. Charles County, O'Fallon, and St. Peter's. St. Charles County oversees 2 of our elementary schools, Flint Hill and Osmond Elementary School. We have night security as well, 10 o'clock till 6 a.m., 10 o'clock p.m., 6 a.m. The night security guards, we have 5 of them that rotate throughout the district, which many times they're doing, you know, they're taking part in surveillance, and anything that they see that is of concern, they will notify law enforcement, notify building administration. We have really have upped our surveillance within the buildings, and our technology, camera systems within the buildings. Those have really gone kind of through a transition with our technology department over the last few years, but we've gone from what have been the old analog systems to more of a kind of a HD and really much more sophisticated, and that's one of those where we're in constant communication. We meet with our SROs, Dr. DeBray and myself, and we really rely on these guys. They're quite adept at being able to utilize that system, and if there's an issue with it, then they're communicating with us as well, along with building administration. So that has been too another thing that we've been able to kind of head some things off pass. All our buildings are equipped with what we call trauma kits. This, again, when we brought the radios on, this was another thing that we worked with our local law enforcement, actually St. Charles County Ambulance District on. These are, I call it a to-go bag, so it is equipped, and I've got a sample here at the table, but essentially in kind of a, what would be possibly an active shooter situation, they are, they're a small bag with a first aid kit, but has tourniquet, has a chest compression pack within it, and we have those in all of our buildings, predominantly in the nurse's office. So again, that was another thing that we brought about as kind of a working with our law enforcement. One thing that I think oftentimes gets underlooked, I think, and probably underutilized is, and we have had this for a long, long time, is our crisis prevention line. We have one of our licensed counselors that mans that phone, and really, truly, in these situations, we rely upon the community to be letting us know when these things are being discussed. If there are situations where maybe some student or someone is posting threatening, messages, things like that, we rely upon that line, somebody calling that line, and that the person that we have that mans that phone, then we get that information immediately. Building administration, law enforcement work hand in hand with them, and oftentimes that happens outside of school hours, and we're working with law enforcement to try to intervene in that in any way that we can. So that is something we leave on our night modes. So when the secretaries switch off the building phone in the evening, that phone number is on there, and oftentimes it's used as just, there could be other situations such as a kiddo doesn't get off the bus, which can certainly create a lot of panic from a parent. So they can call that number, and we can get with in relatively short order give them the assistance that they need. So that's one of those things. We've had that available for a long time, but another area that works well. One of the things, glass strengthening film on all of our elementary school entrances. I know Dr. Bray had mentioned one project that we're looking at with the elementary schools are creating the double vestibule. So we'll have a double buzz-in system that's not currently in place. That is something that we're looking at. And then last but certainly not least, obviously with the active intruder training, which is something that has definitely been within the news here recently, but again, something that came about. We've been doing it honestly for years. I think in 2014, really, there was a mandate at the state level where mandatory training would be brought about. That really was, Jake and I talked about this earlier, that really was when I would say it kind of upped the game with regards to what we're doing within the buildings and training staff. That is something that we work with the same PowerPoint presentation that you have. Our law enforcement officers review that every year. We do and at the high school and middle school level, our SROs kind of take point with that, with the building principal to do that training. And then we do 4 lockdown drills within the school year. And really those drills too are another opportunity for staff to be, obviously not just preparing the kids for that, but also, problem solving and talking with the resource officers, talking with the building principals, having some conversation when that happens. I think, again, one of those things that goes without saying, but certainly is important, is for us to have the opportunity within those staff to do those debriefing when those things happen, whether it's a drill or whether, God forbid, we've had situations where building principals put a building into a lockdown because of maybe something happening outside of school or something on campus, and then taking that opportunity to debrief with the staff at the end. So those are certainly very important. Those are, again, I'm kind of hitting some highlights, but those are the things that we have been doing. I think this summer, certainly, there are some things that we're going to look at too, in light of not just the recent events, but what are some things that maybe we can do to continue to kind of strengthen the practices that we already have in place. Jake, I'll kind of turn it over to you if you want to talk a little bit about, I know you've been a part of the intruder training with both West Middle staff when you were over there, and then now currently at North High. Jake just finished his first full year with North High, so go ahead, Jake.
Thanks, sir. Thanks, guys. The school board, the district administration office here has always been great with working with us and trying to stay, I guess, ahead of what's going on and whatnot. Is really invested some good things into the schools and stuff like that, and taking back the feedback from us at the meetings that we do have about things to improve and stuff like that around the school. As far as the training goes that's going on, it's like anything else. Over the years it can change a little bit with the things as you kind of put some things into place at the school with keeping doors locked, or even the double vestibule type stuff. When incidents happen around the United States, you realize that, well, we've hardened this, but now this is kind of a soft area of the school. So you kind of have to continue to adapt to change and put some things in place with that. With us doing the training at the high schools and when I was at the middle school as well, it's a great time for the staff themselves to kind of really think about how their classrooms are laid out, where we're going to go, what we're going to do, what's available to me, and stuff like that, and get that response from us from what we're looking to do and what our recommendations are for that. So I know over the next several years, and it seems like every 3 to 5 years or so, some of the training that we do starts to adapt enough that you may have to start looking at do we train the staff a little bit different. Overall, the concept for any sort of school intruder sort of thing is always that run, hide, fight model. I don't know that aspect is ever going to change as far as what we're teaching the kids or kind of showing the kids what need to be done, but some of the stuff that we may do with the staff or advice we give to the staff could change just based on whatever school it is. Not all of our schools were built at the same time with the same materials and the same layout. So every school is a little unique in what they can and cannot do and what might be best given the environmental factors and everything else that all of them have to deal with. So we will continue, to be a part of that training at the school and go to training ourselves and kind of push what the current times are finding with active shooter type situations and intruder type situations, and give our recommendations. Just when I walk to school, I try to get 10,000 steps in before lunchtime and stuff like that with checking doors, and it's a nice day outside to do perimeter check, I like to call it, get some sunshine and fresh air sort of thing. But you find stuff then that just kind of gets overlooked from time to time on whether a door is just not functioning correctly or a lock is rusted and the screws are, something like that. So it's been great, being there and being part of all that, and you guys have all been great with it as well.
Jeremy, you or Jake want to address the 4E training we've heard about?
Yeah, we met with, and actually Jake has some familiarity with it a little bit, being when he was split with West Middle and in the Winchville School District, because they have had 4E. So 4E training, the 4 E's are educate, evade, escape, and engage. And it is a training that was brought about by, it's called Tactical 1 Solutions, or Tactical Solutions 1, which are predominantly law enforcement officers that are all been trained in MACTAC, which is training that goes on here in St. Charles County. We met with O'Fallon officers just last week. That is a training that they are interested in looking at. They've actually been in contact with St. Peter's. St. Peter's is interested in that as well. It will, well, I believe in looking what I have with it, and Jake can certainly jump in, I think that some of the elements are very, very similar. That, really, truly, whether this is me at this level or when I was in the building doing this, the thing with active intruder is you don't want to overcomplicate things, and there is a piece to that you want to keep, just kind of with the basics of trying to train the staff on what to do in these situations, because every situation certainly can be situational, and you got to be able to kind of have some ability to think through that and give them that ability to do that too. I think with 4E training, one thing that what we were hearing from O'Fallon, and like I said, Jake can jump in, but it's going to probably provide a little, it has some hands-on components with it where they may be doing a little bit more scenario type work with the staff, some tabletop exercises, but then also kind of maybe kind of a recreation of such to try to put the staff into that, and I think that is something that we have heard from some of our building principals and some staff members that, that might be a little bit more in depth than where the PowerPoint is, but I think if I'm kind of leaving anything out there that.
No, you're right. A lot of the training that we've done with this type of stuff, it's all PowerPoint based. And maybe me just standing up in front of the group, in the auditorium, something like that, kind of talking about this. You can only do so much there before you've kind of heard the same old thing, and then some of it, naturally, if you have repeat training that's required, every year, you think you know it all, but you get complacent with it a little bit. So when we talk about the scenario, kind of stuff, it puts them in. You can experience it a little bit. Hopefully nobody ever has to live that, but it gets them thinking that when we go into this classroom, this is what needs to happen in here. Or you go into that classroom, and I try to get some of the staff members and the teachers to realize that even though we're talking about this in here, and I'm saying in general, this is what we do, in general we do that, you need to go to your classroom, go to the parts of the school where you may find yourself, whether it be the break room, the copy room, teacher's lounge, whatever it is, and okay, when something happens and I'm in this place, where do I go? What do I do? You have to walk that through your head. That's something that we as law enforcement just naturally do with what we do. But when we talk about the training as well, we go through, and something like this will be a whole day, if not 2 days of training for us. And we're limited with school staff because they have to do their own training in so many other areas as well. So trying to just expand on it enough that they will act when that time comes, I think is the next step that we're trying to get at with this particular training. And when this all came to be around that 2014 time and whatnot, everybody kind of had to come up with their training. There was nothing at that time. So this wasn't incorrect and still isn't completely incorrect. It's just in this particular area, the 4E is what's really taken hold as far as training goes and has started to spread. Dealt with it a little bit when I was SRO at Wentzville and whatnot. And there's similarities between it all, but it's just kind of been the standard that is starting to spread in the area. Some SWAT guys in St. Louis County put it all together after they went through training and looked at the different active shooter scenarios that have happened around the United States, and it's just what has worked well and has been a good training model to use. So I think that's kind of why we're getting there now. With COVID, with everything else, kind of pushed this off a little longer because this was coming about shortly before then, but then we have to send officers to that training to be trainers and all that kind of jazz, and that all just kind of stalled out over that time. So here we are, as everybody else, just trying to get things back in the full swing again. So.
Great. Thanks, guys. Questions?
I got just a couple, because obviously this is, if you're in the school business, this is something that's on your mind all the time. First of all, I want to commend you, because Zumwalt's doing a lot of things that, probably above and beyond a lot of other places, so I commend you for that. I know a lot of times over the years, my experience with SROs is, when they're there, it's great. I love having them. And I'm not sure, do we have shared cost contracts with our SROs? Like, it's pretty typical. I got to thinking, I feel real comfortable when you're in the building. When I don't feel real comfortable is when you're not in the building. And, because you still work for O'Fallon Police Department or St. Charles, I know you get called away for trainings, you get called away for different things. And I don't know about Zumwalt yet, but it's pretty typical not to have somebody fill in at those times. So I guess my concern is, for the group as we move forward, if we really want the SROs or our police officer to be the first line of defense and we want to be able to count on it, we might have to start rethinking kind of pulling them out here and there and not replacing them, because we don't know when something's going to happen. So if it happens when you're at morning muster, or it happens when you're under training some other day, that concerns me. So I just think, and that's typical, that's the same everywhere, but I think moving forward, maybe that's something we need to start thinking about. Is there a way to make sure that that protection is always there? And if that is really, maybe it's time to say that's the first and foremost role of that person. Protection's first. Because it evolved out of being a resource and dare officer, and those are great things. But, if your first responsibility is protection, then somebody's got to be there to provide it. So as we move forward, and that's no knock on you, please don't ever take that, because like I said, when you're there, it's great. But as we move forward, we just might want to think about, is there a way we make sure we have that all the time? You know, and that person's able to respond, because we're vulnerable at recess, when kids are outside, arrival, dismissal, and even if you have somebody that's in the building too tied down with something else, can they really respond fast enough to really save lives? So it's just something I've personally been thinking about, you know, and as the responsible folks, it's just something to think about as we move forward. If there's a way to start trying to bridge those gaps so we don't have opportunities when someone's not there. So just something to think about.
Jeff? Okay, all right.
Well, I think the lockdowns that we've been having in the high schools as a building administrator, having them, 4 times a year or whatever, sometimes there's a few people that don't take it serious, but a lot of people take it serious. Our SROs do a good job of making people understand how important it is. And almost every time we did those, we learned something on what we could do better. Not necessarily if something was wrong, or occasionally you'd find a kid over here. Well, where was that kid when we did the lockdown? May have been in the restroom or something. Now, the question is, what do we do with that kid? He walks out in the hallway, what do we do? Teacher sees him, do they open the door, let him in? Maybe not. What is he, is he the shooter? I mean, those are discussions that we had. And it was a great dialogue, and we talked about the post-conferences, afterwards. And I always thought that was very important in taking a step each time to be more prepared in case something did happen. So I think it's something we, obviously continue and expand however we can.
Something that I always think about too is the mental effect this has on our kiddos, especially the younger. I think the older it's still scary, but they have more of a capability to walk through it. And I think that's important that we make sure that because the teachers are really the person who leads it, and how they present it to the kiddos, and how they, this is what we're doing, and dealing with any of them, that we make sure we provide help if they need it on how to talk to the kids, or if they're seeing something, and their mental health with it too, because it is. Honestly, when I'm standing in a classroom with little first graders and I'm having to move them, and I'm thinking like, is this really happening? It is, and teachers have to deal with that every time they do that, and that mental concept of working through it. So I just want to make sure that when we're doing all this, that we're thinking of that too, and that we're providing all of that, because that's a huge component of how, we support our teachers, because the teachers then support our kiddos with it too, so.
One of the big things to probably note on some of that is this training here, when we train the staff, show the staff what to do, as these kids are from kindergarten really up through high school, they're looking at the teacher and the staff of the school on how they respond and react. So if we get them on board with what to do and how to do it and stuff like that, and they can take that first step, your kids are going to follow. You got a teacher that's freaking out, the kids are freaking out. You got a teacher that has got a plan of action, they're going through it. The kids are typically going to be more calm and follow that particular procedure, protocol, whatever's going on. So that's really the kind of goal, with this, is to get them the proper education, with all of it. So, God forbid something does happen, we've taken the right steps, we're doing the right things, and we'll take what comes of us at that time, but at least we've done everything we can to minimize any negative impact from it.
All right.
Very good.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks, Jake.
Next, we have our consent agenda. Need a motion to approve. John and Gabriel. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Financial reports.
Good evening, members of the board. In your packet, you have the 22-23 draft budget. You've had it for over the weekend. This budget, like all others, there are 5 required parts to a budget, and that is by state law, and that's the budget message, which this does not have yet. This is just a draft. I will have that in the final version coming Monday. The fund balance section, revenues, expenses, and outstanding debt. The budget message is just a narrative that describes the summary of the changes between, which would be this budget and the last budget that was presented to you, which would be the May revised budget for last year. This section also includes the tax rate and assessed valuation history is what I put in there. Fund balance shows all of the balances for all of our funds that we have in the district. We also have the revenue section, which is a summary and detailed schedules by object and by fund by year. The expenses, summary, detailed schedules also by object and also by function. And then we have the debt schedule. So this, I'll just go through some of the highlights of this budget in particular. So right now we are looking at about an estimated 6.2 million increase in revenues and a 6.4 million increase in operating revenues and operating expenses. So that is showing a $6.4 million surplus this year, which is getting us up to about 18.5 million. I have to point out though that a lot of that revenue is coming from one-time sources. We have still remaining in this, that'll come for next year, about 4.6 million in ESSER 3 funding and another 700,000 in a teacher retention grant. That is part of what we helped with enhancing the salary schedule with. We also are getting 3.2 million, which was very unexpected, as a full funding, or what they're calling a full funding of the transportation formula, which is 75% is what the maximum by state law is. They've already, actually in this memo, there's a memo from DESI that we get every month, and in this memo it says one-time funding, and you have to be very careful because there were districts the year before that weren't running their transportation services. So that 75%, while they say it's full funding, may not, it may come in a little bit under that. They'll have to start prorating the amount because it's a set pool that they've put out there. So some of the highlights, I hit a few of those, but the current taxes I'm looking at and delinquent, an increase of about 3.1 million. Prop C sales taxes are coming in about 800,000 more, and we actually saw a bump this year. Sales taxes are coming in really strong in the state. Interest earnings are going to be going up. There are a few major negatives when you look at the budget in total. As you guys know, last month we sold, it was about $82 million in debt, and 24 of that was for refunding, and the other revenue we brought in was close to $60 million in new money to help fund all these ongoing capital needs. Also, some other things that are going to skew the budget a little bit. This was going to be, this year is the last year that the Fed is going to fully fund the food service program. All meals for all kids are free right now, which it's done a couple of things. First of all, that was a higher reimbursement rate than we typically would charge the kids, so we're bringing in more money from that. And more kids are eating because it's all free all the time, so we've got more kids that are actually getting served. So that, a couple of things. So that's going to show as a decrease of about $7.4 million in federal funding, and then it's only going to be offset by about 3.3 million in local funds when we have to start charging for those meals again. So it's really helped because our food service fund actually was very depleted after we continued to serve those kids for COVID. We really didn't have anything to help offset that until the Fed came in with that higher reimbursement rate. Transportation funding, right now I'm at about 3.2 million increase in revenue. Again, that's one time. That's what they're telling us, it's one-time revenue, and that could come in lower, so I'm kind of taking that with a little grain of salt. I'm hoping that it's the 3.2 million, because we can really use that to help prop our balances up. And then another 485,000 for early childhood, but that's based on this year's expenditures, so that'll just be an increase to cover the costs that we already have. And then I've put in about 300,000 for high needs funding. We had some kiddos, high needs kids that were held back at home during COVID. Those are starting to come back in, and those services are starting to be delivered again, and those high needs kids cost a lot of money. So we get some reimbursement from the state on some of those high needs costs. Net effect, we have about 4.6 million still left, as I said before, in ESSER 3 money, but we're getting about 6.2 million this year. So the net effect of that is really it's a negative $1 million when you look at ESSER funding between last year and this year. And then we have it looks like a large drop, which is also skewing the overall budget by that drop of $76 million because of that one-time bond money. So as you know, we sell it, goes into balances at the end of this year, and then it's a deficit spend down thereafter. Expenditure side, we're looking at $3.8 million increase in salaries and benefits from staffing changes and all of the raises that were awarded. $1.5 million is the increase in insurance premiums and retirement to go along with that. For the most part, those are really the big major changes that happen in expenses. I don't know, does anybody have any questions about anything that's in there or anything that's been presented that I could help explain right now?
Any questions? We don't need to take action, just do it.
No, you'll have a week to look at the budget, and if you have questions, you definitely can call Jeff over the week, and then any changes he'll take into account and bring back the final draft at next Monday.
Go, Jeff.
So the next part of the financial reports is a renewal of the auditor agreement. I direct your attention to the memo that I put in. I'm recommending Clifton Larson Allen as the district's independent auditor for the year ending, which is this year, June 30th, 2022. We've worked with them for many years, and we've been very pleased with their service. They're proposing a fee of $26,200 to complete the audit for the 21-22 school year. I have contacted several other districts of similar size, Parkway, Rockwood, Francis Howell, and they are all paying more, substantially more than we're paying for our audit. They've all bid theirs out, and they're still paying more. So audits of school districts are very specialized. There is a lot of compliance that goes along with auditing a school district. It has to do with transportation, the attendance, all the federal program auditing, and not all audit firms have the specialization and knowledge to do those kind of audits. I know there are a lot of times some of these districts will go out for bid, and if you talk to them, they don't get a lot of bids from a lot of other districts or from a lot of other firms because they don't have the knowledge to do those audits. So I'm just asking that the board accept and approve this. And I would like to point out too that sometimes people get worried that your auditor might get complacent in some way, shape, or form. That is not the case with these guys. We've had staff turnover like everybody else. We've had new managers on the job, new staff accountants, and even a new partner supervising this audit over the years and tenure that I've been here. So it's not just the same people coming year after year and just rubber stamping our audit. So I'm asking that you approve Clifton Larson Allen for this year.
And I just wanted to point out to you guys too, in case you weren't aware of this, that they did call me and talk to me with the board president and ask if I had any questions, go through a whole bunch of different questions about what we have going on in the district, things we're aware of, different things Jeff presents to us. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and he gave me his number, I can call him anytime. It's any time through the year anyways to go through if there's anything that we wanted to discuss with him further. So just so you guys are aware of that too. But I feel very good and sound with everything. I asked him a lot of questions and he was very on it. So I need a motion to renew the auditor agreement. Mr. Christopher, second Mr. George. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right.
Next section is the approval of the accounts payable report. This is not the typical, this is always included in my monthly financial report, but I won't bring the full financial summary and the financial statements back until next Monday. This is just the accounts payable, which is basically the warrant report for the check listing that of all the bills that are getting paid, so we can release those checks. We don't release checks until after the board has approved that. So that's what, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those, but I'm just asking you to approve the monthly bills.
We need approval of the accounts payable. Need a motion? Mr. Helms, second Ms. Mary. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right.
First item under old business is board priority 4. This is coming from this past year's board priorities. We had 10 of them. Board priority 4 was to establish a district committee to study and implement improvements for the reading program, including the issue of dyslexia. Jen Waters, Laura Smith worked together on this, and they have the recommendations to bring from this committee this year. Jen, I'll turn it over to you and Laura.
All right, thank you, Dr. DeBray. Good evening. We have I hope, fairly short PowerPoint presentation. We wanted to go through and talk just a little bit about the process of the group and the committee, and then we ended up with basically 7 recommendations that came out of this group, many that we've kind of already put into place, so we'd like to go through those with you as well. So just to start, as Dr. DeBray said, this district committee was formed in response to the board priority 4 for 21-22. We looked at all of the reading services and the reading programming that currently are going on right now in the district. You got a good glimpse of middle school reading last month when we approved that curriculum in those resources. So tonight we'll talk a lot about elementary and where we are there. So the committee was composed of teachers, parents, admin, and Mrs. Powers. So we had 1 board member on the committee as well. We ended up with about 20 people on the committee, which was a nice workable number. We met 2 times in person. The first time we basically went through current trends and research. We talked a lot about the science of reading, which is becoming very, very important. Has always been important, but we're now backing that up with materials and instruction. We reviewed all of the current reading practices, programs, assessments, and PD that we are providing right now. I think that was pretty eye-opening to that group because I don't think that everybody realizes what's going on in all areas, so that was a good review of what we're doing. We talked a little bit about how, as a district, we're responding to the current dyslexia legislation, which really has a lot to do with appropriately screening our students and then providing necessary classroom supports. We've kind of adopted the belief that if you can't read, you can't read. It doesn't matter if you're special ed or if you're dyslexic. We need to help every single kid no matter what. So we've really kind of taken that on as our mission, and that starts in our classrooms every day. Following the meeting, we sent a survey to everybody that participated, gathered some more feedback so we could kind of pare down the topics for our second meeting. So we came back, we had another meeting. We broke into discussion groups during that meeting, had some excellent conversation with different kinds of people in each group. We had principals, parents, teachers, coordinators that all took part in this, and there was a lot of interesting conversation, and we really broke it down. We were really able to identify 7 topics that people were very interested in and wanted to see some movement on. So we concluded with spokespersons for each of the groups kind of summarizing questions that people had. We were able to give some clarifying information when people had those questions. So it was good that we had all met in the same spot. So after that, we sent out 7 different themes that had been identified. And then a second survey was sent to the whole committee with the 7 recommendations, and we got some feedback from everybody as far as moving forward. Everyone was on board with the 7 topics and the things that we have identified. So those are the things that we want to go through with you today and talk a little bit about some of the action steps we've already taken and then some of the things that we will be continuing to work on. I don't ever see this process being finished. This is something that we will always be paying a lot of attention to and be working hard on. I think Laura and I would, in our opinion, probably say that making sure our students can read well is the most important thing that we do academically in elementary school. So I will turn that over to you, and she's going to go through the first couple recommendations for you.
So the first recommendation, First recommendation has to do with early childhood. As a group, we identified that we need to have a stronger knowledge base within the folks that are working with our 3 to 5-year-olds at our early childhood center. And so we have already acted on that action item, and we have identified an early childhood teacher who is going to be trained in letters for early childhood specifically. And that facilitator will be trained in November and will be able to begin working with our teachers, certified staff at the Early Childhood Center as early as January. That will allow us to be able to look at our youngest learners as they begin to struggle and be able to intervene at the earliest level possible. There is interest in being able to identify those characteristics of dyslexia or other reading difficulties early on, and the correlation with any kind of speech or language issues that kids may develop or delays at that age. So we're really excited about that opportunity to bring letters and that science of reading to our teachers of our youngest students. Our second recommendation that the committee came up with was to provide equitable access to reading intervention services to struggling readers across the district. It was a difficult conversation, but we had our practitioners were there and were willing to speak freely. We had parents looking at the concerns, and really what we boiled that down to is some action items to look closely at the numbers of students in all of our elementary buildings to determine if our students with the highest need are on waiting lists or if they're being served. Upon identifying that there were two buildings, our primary buildings, and that makes sense. We have the most young learners at those two locations, and so 2 additional reading teachers have been hired for J.L. Mudd and St. Peter's for those students for this coming school year. And then we continue to explore the possibility of looking at reading interventionists. We would need to do some additional collaboration to determine how those interventionists would best be utilized and where they might be located, what type training might be needed. And recommendation number 3, we should continue to provide ongoing literacy professional development in topics such as letters, the science of reading, and 95% group, as well as all other currently utilized reading materials and programs. So you are aware already of our cohorts of teachers who are engaged in the letters training. We will also continue to train our instructional coaches so that they are best equipped to provide literacy training to all staff during the 22-23 school year. We continue to provide specialized training for teachers who work with students with IEPs. We have several programs, but if those programs are not successful with students, then we can begin the work with Wilson, and Wilson is a highly recommended program for students with learning disabilities in the area of reading, which includes students with dyslexia. Specific science of reading training for our middle school reading teachers and 9th grade literacy skills teachers. And then we will continue to provide PD opportunities in the area of literacy for all content area teachers.
And just to add on, the PD that will be coming up in August for our elementary teachers, they will be receiving additional reading training. We've done a lot of it. We have about 120 teachers or so signed up for letters training again next year. So it's a big expense. It takes up a good part of my budget, but we feel really strongly that it's worth every penny. And what we found was that combination of a teacher who is trained in letters and is also using 95% group materials in their classroom, that combination is golden. I mean, we're seeing really huge growth out of those students. So pretty exciting.
Sorry. I also think it's a pretty remarkable testament to our teachers, how interested they are in attending that training in consideration of the amount of work that is included. So they are really dedicated and excited, as well as those 2 groups of special education teachers that are engaged in the Wilson training. So I really do think that it's a nice statement about our teachers.
I agree. And that letters training includes coaches, it includes special education teachers. It's been remarkable how many people have volunteered. So I would completely agree. Recommendation number 4, the district should investigate ways to increase time for elementary teachers to work in professional learning communities and engage in professional learning opportunities. This is difficult to carve out the time for them to work. One of the things, I know last week we had a group of principals over to the PDTC where they were working together to try to build schedules where they can make sure that teachers have common plan time to work on those PLCs. But really, the amount of time they have is just that early release day each month where they have time off specifically to work, in addition to the 3 4-hour PD days each year. So we're doing our best to work within the confines that we have, and I think our principals are really, really trying to carve that time out whenever they can. Recommendation number 5, the district should provide an explicit phonics program in Tier 1 instruction, grades K through 3, and you all are aware that we have decided to move forward with that. We have purchased the 95% group materials for the remainder of the 8 buildings who were not a part of the pilot program last year. And those teachers will be trained on the teacher work days. By the 95% group, they will come in and do that training. So I'm excited about that. We're using those materials in summer school too, so we're seeing a lot of really good growth with students who need it. Recommendation 6, I'm sorry, I wanted to just go back to the 95% phonics core program just a little bit. We did get the end of year results from that pilot program from the researchers, and they were really good. Participating students who were in the control group demonstrated a significant boost in reading skills in grades 1 and 2, K1, 2. Second graders, oral reading fluencies, they showed substantial growth, demonstrated the application of phonics skills in other reading areas, so their accuracy when they were reading really went up, so that was really great. Teachers shared positive feedback about the quality of the program. Overwhelmingly, we were really shocked at the response that we got from our teachers. And teacher observation showed that students in the 95% classrooms were more engaged during that word study portion of reading and writing. And they were often more on task, students were. And that was not us doing that observing. 95% group came in and did that observing, and they're the ones that reported that. So those were all really positive things that came out of that study last year. They have approached us about continuing on with the study with our remainder 8 buildings. So we're going to talk to them next week and see how that might work, because the research is good for us. You know, we're learning a lot about instructional practices and what we can do to support teachers better. So we may continue on with that, and we'll let you know that after we talk to them. Okay, recommendation number 6, the district should review word study programming for grades 4 and 5 and determine what needs there might be. It's been a while since we've taken a really hard look at that. So the elementary ELA coordinator, Stephanie Sanker, is going to work with teams of teachers in 4th and 5th grade this year to evaluate what we have and then take a look at what we might need. And so we will come back to you if they find that we need some more materials and some more training. And number 7, and this might be the toughest one, the district, along with stakeholders, should create a new elementary schedule that is responsive to the needs of our students. And we've talked a little bit about this before in the past. What we find and what teachers and parents agree with is that currently our elementary schedules cause students to have too many transition times throughout the school day. I know Laura's going to add on a little bit there. The uneven number of minutes for specials creates a lack of consistency for students. Schedules are very difficult to make when you have those uneven numbers that you're working with. And then teachers would like to see a more streamlined and prioritized schedule, which allows for special ed, ESOL, and reading teachers to be part of PLC time, so we can get those people in the same groups. And then if you wanted to talk a little bit about the transitions.
Sure. Transition times for elementary students, so what we're talking about there is just the number of times in a day that instruction has to come to a temporary pause so that they can leave the classroom and do something else. And so a few of our principals did some looking at individual student schedules, and found just an astronomical number of times, especially our students with needs to leave the classroom, like they have to go somewhere else for their English learning studies, or they need to leave for special education services. So what we know then is that learning has to be paused, and there's some downtime there, that momentum gets going, and the teacher has to remember where they left off, and that disruption then causes, for all kids, difficulty. But for students who have difficulty transitioning, then we're just multiplying that. So we would, in working with the group, it does sound like we have a need to take a look at that and see what we can do to make things, to just naturally bring down that level of anxiety and potential disruption and aggression during the school day.
Those are the 7 recommendations from the committee. They did a lot of really great work, and we have a lot of really passionate teachers in this district. So felt very strongly about the momentum that we've gained and where we're going. But we certainly still have some work to do, and we will continue on with that.
That's a perfect example of a Board of Education priority. When there's committee work that goes on and good recommendations that come out of it that really make change. So I'm going to talk later about our bullying priority. That's the way it works. Put a good committee together with a lot of different participation, have your meetings, focus groups, develop your recommendations, and vet them out. That's exactly what needs to happen in a board priority.
Yeah,
So
it was a great
job.
committee.
Great
Yeah.
job.
Thank you.
Any questions from anybody? I know, Erica, you were part of it, so I don't know if you want to.
I just, like you said, our teachers, I don't know if all of you realize that the letters training is like college that they're taking on.
It
It's
is.
very intense, it's very time, and like they said, so many teachers are like, we'll do it, we want to do it, and they're volunteering for it, because it is a phenomenal program. And I witnessed 95% in the classroom, and I can tell you, it's just, it's so good. It really is, and I think it's really going to help our kids in so many levels. And with the scheduling, I completely agree, because there were so many kids that they would be called out, and then the teacher's trying to like, well, I'm not gonna start something new because these 3 kids are out and this one's gonna be called here. And then some of the kids would have breakdowns because it was that change, and the teacher's trying to, and so I've said 3 times now, the teacher has to do this, the teacher has to do this. So we're putting more on again. So I think anything we can do to help alleviate that is absolutely necessary for the teachers and the kids, 100%. So I'm incredibly happy with everything that we came up with out of it, and I'm really appreciative of everybody.
That's impressive work, great. I'm excited about it too, those are great recommendations.
Yeah, I think y'all did a phenomenal job. And you may have covered the question I had, you were always so thorough, I was trying to jot down notes in the way, but the training itself, that letter training, where does that happen at? Does that happen like in the summertime? Does it happen during the school year? When exactly?
So the letters training?
Yeah, you train the
It
staff.
happens during the school year.
Okay.
So on the professional development days,
Okay.
those teachers, that is their professional
That's what they
development
do.
on those days, and then they continue. They're really only required to do 4 hours, but they give their whole days to that.
Okay.
And then there's, like Erica said, there's a lot of additional work outside of the actual professional development as well. And they do that on their own time, many of them. So there are some opportunities for them to earn college credit through Lindenwood, so a lot of them have taken advantage of that, which is wonderful. But a lot of them don't need it and are doing it anyway. So it is truly a testament to our teachers and how passionate they are about it.
Sounds good. All right.
I see a lot of heads nodding over here.
I see some of them back here who have been through this training.
You guys on the committee?
Yeah.
Some of them just, wow, you're that excited about it.
I think they're excited about the math coming up too.
That too.
Well, we'll save accolades for them too.
All right, I need a motion if there's no other questions to approve the recommendations.
I so move.
Mr. Marion, I have a second. Mr. Helms, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. The computer lease recommendation, Mr. Orr.
Yeah, in your packet, you have my recommendation. It's a memo. In January, the board approved the technology department's recommendation for next year's computer purchase. And shortly thereafter, Dell came to us with a 0% on $1 million worth of Chromebooks. So, of course, we took advantage of that, which was very nice of them. But that still left us with a $1,652,000 that we still needed to finance for the remainder of the purchase. So I went to 7 different lenders and asked for quotes on how to finance that. And the cheapest one this year is First American Education Finance. We have, they actually were the winner of, I think, 2 years ago, that lease purchase. So with that, they have the lowest lease purchase cost, so I'm going to recommend American, it's a First American Education Finance for this year's computer lease.
Do you have any questions regarding computer lease? All right, I need a motion to approve computer lease recommendation by Mr. Orr. Mr. Christopher, a second. Mr. George, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Dr. DeBrey, new business.
First item under new business is our K through 8 math curriculum recommendation. And if you like what you heard on reading, I know you're going to like here on this. So Jen, will you do the introductions?
Yes. And I want to just go through the memo with you really quickly prior to Amy and Heather doing their presentation. Because it's a little bit complicated, so I wanted to make sure that you all understand how we're moving through this. So, first of all, wrote the curriculum, and then with their committees, they chose materials. So that is all complete. What's a little unusual is that we are asking the board to approve all of this evening, but our intention is not to actually implement until 23-24. So, and the reasoning behind that is because it was very, very difficult this year for us to get substitute teachers. As you guys are all aware, so we ended up having to cancel several of the dates where they would actually be putting together some of the teacher guides and some of the teacher materials. And additionally, I think that we would like another year kind of to get our legs underneath of us so we can roll this out and feel very, very solid about it when we do the full implementation. In the meantime, however, we were approached by Imagine Learning, who owns Illustrative, which these are the materials that we would like to purchase. They have asked us to participate in a study conducted by Johns Hopkins University, where we would pilot the materials for a year. They would do research on our students with a control group, just like very similar to what we did with 95% group. We would get all of that information back. Teachers, we have had over 200 teachers, elementary and middle school, volunteer to be part of the study. They want to do it. We're not forcing anybody, totally up to the teachers. They've done a wonderful job of recruiting and asking, explaining the process and what would be involved, and I know they're going to talk a little bit about that. But that's why this is just a little bit different. So we will use this year to do our scope and sequence and to do all of our guides for teachers. We'll have everything ready to go. We'll have some great action research back on our kids. So if we need to make any adjustments in the curriculum or with the materials, we'll have time to do that. And then our intent would be 23-24 to roll the whole thing out to everyone. So are there any questions about that? I just wanted to make sure everybody was understanding that this would not start with everybody next year, just for that select group of teachers who will be part of the pilot. And I included that, the pilot information in my board memo for you to take a look at. JB has taken a look at that, and he feels confident that all of the student information will be kept confidential and will not be a problem. They've done a lot of studies with school districts, so they were very easy to work with and well aware of what our needs would be. So, okay, ladies, I will turn it over to you. There you go. Okay.
Good evening, I'm Heather Krieger. I'm the elementary math curriculum coordinator for the district, and I'm excited to share the work that we've done over the last year with you all this evening. When we started this process a year ago, Christy Corp, our elementary math facilitator, and I, our number one goal going into this was to honor the work that our elementary teachers have done regarding mathematics over the last 6 years. We spent significant time investing in their content development and working through that within the classroom. So as we embarked upon this journey, we wanted to honor that work, but also recognize that the content understanding that they've developed is going to be instrumental to their success moving forward, and most importantly, the success of our students. Art committee, you can see everybody that was a part of it. We're lucky enough to have, ladies, if you can please stand, 5 members of our committee who came tonight. I could not be more proud of the work that the members of the committee did this year, both during our time working, but also in their classrooms. Their flexibility and willingness to work through new things in a school year that was anything but ordinary is commendable. So thank you is not big enough to every person listed on that screen. Our process this year was very thorough. When we began by making a committee based on recommendations of building principals. From there, we ensured that each elementary school in our district was represented, and we had a wide range of teacher experiences, all the way from a second-year teacher to a 28-year veteran. And every teacher brought a really spectacular piece to that committee and took away professional learning. Within that committee work, the decisions were solely made by the teachers. Christy, myself, and our instructional coaches were there to guide and answer questions, but we leaned on the teachers to make the decisions as we moved forward. As we worked through determining a new resource, quality was very important to us. We had our committee work with a very detailed rubric that looked at various components. The categories included alignment and accuracy, progressions and coherence, rigor, use and design to facilitate student learning, teacher planning and success with our Missouri Learning Standards, and also assessment. From there, here's a sample of that. Also within here, if you all would like to look at it more closely, you can view the entire rubric. This was an 8-page rubric that our teachers looked at all of this criteria for each of the resources that we went through to make this determination. The 4 resources that we evaluated were Envision Math, Into Math, Math in Focus 2020, and Illustrative Mathematics. You can see there was a very significant difference in the overall ratings of the final 2 resources. Once we got to Illustrative and Math in Focus, at that time, our teachers then took each of those materials and worked with them within their classrooms before making our final decision. After those 2 resources were selected as our final 2, we brought in representatives from those companies to share information. That was available to all teachers within our district to attend those meetings. Additionally, the ladies and gentlemen within our committee put together a presentation that was given at each building to highlight the process that we went through this year. From there, we took feedback and used that to continually move forward. As we move through the process for this next school year, through our pilot in year 0, but also into full implementation, teacher feedback is going to be instrumental with that success. The learning that will take place by having only 43% of our teachers implementing next year will be key to having a more successful full implementation during the 23 school year. Right now, I'm going to hand it over to Amy to talk about middle school.
Thank you. I'm Amy Sand. I am the secondary mathematics coordinator. And when I started this job, Heather started the job at the same time. And so one of the goals that we had when we started was to bridge the gap between elementary and secondary. we do good things in elementary, and then for some reason, we decide to shift paths in secondary, and kids don't respond always in the best way. So our goals for our middle school revision committee reflect that we wanted to build that bridge between what's going on in elementary and how to build on it rather than start over. We also wanted to, as Heather said, recognize the good work that had been done in the 6 years since our previous revision. I think it was Mr. Christopher that talked about the intruder drills, always looking for where you can get better, seeing what you did well, looking for ways to improve. And that's really what our focus was. What are we doing well, and where can we improve so that all students are getting equitable and high quality opportunities to engage in mathematics. So my revision team is a little bit smaller. I have 4 middle schools instead of 16 like Heather has elementary. And Becky is here. She was on the committee. Becky, stand up. So this was a really great group of teachers to work with. They were recommended by their building principals and department chairs, just like Heather had. And you will hear a lot of similarities between what I'm talking about and what Heather did with elementary, because we want that to be coherent between kindergarten through 8th grade. So, so my 12, actually 13, because I did have one SPED teacher, which was a great perspective to have for secondary. They represented all 4 buildings and all 4 grade levels, or 3 grade levels. So it is equal across the board in our representation on the committee. And I didn't want to put numbers on my presentation for teachers. I didn't want to call anybody out when we do matchy. But we did have a wide range of expertise on our committee as well. And the decisions were made by the committee, but that group of teachers was so good about going back into their buildings and taking the information to their PLCs and their admin. And so even though it was 12 people driving the bus, everybody was on the bus with us. Everybody knew all things that were going on in that committee. So my process was very similar to Heather's. We did an audit of our current curriculum, and I want to explain that just a little bit, because audit usually is associated with financial ideas, but our audit really was, are we teaching what we need to teach, and are we reaching all students? And what we found out was the content is there, we just needed to put it together in a better way that made more sense for all students. Missouri, DESE put out some priority standards for learning this year, and so we looked at our scope and sequence, and we noticed that we were not equitably distributing our priority standards across the year. We might have 4 in first semester and 12 in second semester. But when you have a deadline of a MAP or EOC test that comes in April, that's not a good distribution. So then after we looked at our curriculum, we did a deep dive with the same rubric that elementary used, again, building that coherence from kindergarten through 8th grade. So the same criteria were used. I didn't put a snippet in because Heather already had. When we reviewed resources, we had 2 phases. I think we started with 5 or 6, I can't remember, and we did the same deep dive with the rubric, got it down to 2. Those 2 were Envisions Math and Illustrative Mathematics. Those 2 were then taken to phase 2, and all teachers, not just the committee, had the opportunity to try those materials out in their classroom. They heard from the reps from each publisher about their product, and at the end of that period, we had every teacher vote, and the vote came out to be 63% to 37% illustrative mathematics. So that is what we are recommending for K-8, which we are so excited about having one resource from kindergarten and eventually to pre-K. They will have a pre-K. Sorry, Heather, didn't mean to steal all my thunder. We are very excited about having one consistent resource that focuses on the same instructional strategies, the same philosophy of building conceptual understanding first from kindergarten through 8th grade.
And also the opportunity for students to have a consistent platform. Moving within this digital age, they will have consistency right now from grades K through 8 in terms of what they're looking at for assignments, for assessment, and those pieces to expect. And potentially, pre-K does go into beta pilot during the 23-24 school year. So that could potentially provide an opportunity for kindergarten teachers to have even more materials to differentiate for those struggling learners, and potentially maybe consider that for early childhood.
One thing I didn't mention also is the pilot and all the materials. I included that bid in the board memo. They're giving those all to us for free, and it was a substantial amount of money. So they've been fantastic to work with. Have really just gone over the top pretty much with whatever we've asked. They've provided. So we've been really pleased with the relationship we're forming. Any questions?
I do have a question. How does this compare, how does the workload of this, this approach compare to the workload that the students have now?
So I would have to say one of the pieces that we looked at both at the elementary level from the perspective of teachers and students is a resource that would follow the same instructional expectations and similar what we call progressions. So our students would still be engaging in math in a very hands-on, conceptual way. Through the year of implementation, I think teachers will see that they'll spend a little bit more time planning and preparing that first year because they're not familiar with the resource. I do feel as though after that first year, because of the design of the platform, it will become very efficient for both teachers and students.
And I would say from the secondary level, it will look like the students are doing less because what they're doing is focused and targeted and better quality practice. So instead of bringing a worksheet home that has 25 to 30 questions repeating one skill or multiple skills, kids are going to be doing the brunt of the work, I'll use that word, in the classroom because it's very discussion-based and learning from your peers and having a multiple variety of strategies shown for kids to learn from. So it will look on the parent side like kids aren't doing as much, but really they're doing more. It just, it looks different.
That sounds great. One thing that just concerns me is, I'm all about cutting edge and us trying to be ahead of the curve or whatnot, but sometimes we implement all this, when you do that, you end up adding more copious amounts of work, and kids, it just adds to the already,
We want to work
exactly.
smarter, not harder.
Exactly. All right.
And I do feel like Amy and I are very heavily involved with DESE and the mathematics at DESE. I feel as though this resource from K up is very much in line with the expectations of the state. And as Amy said, it really is the less is more. When you walk into an elementary math classroom, I expect you to hear conversation. Kids engaged with the math with their hands, but also in conversation with the teacher and also their peers.
So I have one more question, I'll shut up, I promise. How does this fit in or fit in along the lines of standardized testing? Is this still follow that same path, or does this start to kind of divert away from that, or does it not have any? I'm just trying to understand if this is obviously.
Like the testing they do during the school year?
Correct.
It will prepare them very well for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Will there be as much?
I think the assessments will look different. So for example, in elementary, most grade levels have 7 to 8 units. So they would have 7 to 8 unit assessments. And of course, they call them a cool down, a formative assessment that would happen daily for teachers to monitor the understanding of students on that day prior to moving on to the next day's instruction. The tools that are there eventually, I do feel as though, as Mrs. Waters said, we'll be very powerful in preparing our kids to be more equipped for the MAP test in the spring, and also more equipped for potential changes that could be coming to assessment.
You all did a phenomenal job. Thank you. You all too.
So it's exciting that, we have that bridging the gap between elementary and middle. Do you feel like this will bridge well into the high school as well?
So that's my task.
That's segue for you.
So I'll be back here again next year with Mac 12. Yes, I hope that this is going to eventually build a pathway from kindergarten through 12th grade.
Fair enough. Well, great job. Thank you. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for all the hard work.
The K-8 math curriculum recommendations.
Hold on.
Mr. Helms and Mr. George, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Very good. Next item, Paul Becker, come on up here wherever you're at. Paul's back here, he's back here once a year to make recommendations on lunch and breakfast prices and also for our suppliers for the year. Paul?
Dr. Bragg, members of the board. You can see the meal price increases that recommended for the 22-23 school year. Our prices have remained stagnant for our meal prices the last 2 years because meals have been free. But if kids came up and bought second or third meals because they're hungry, especially in the secondary schools, those prices did apply. So since we haven't raised prices in the past 2 years, prices in food, gasoline, non-food items, packaging, those types of things have increased dramatically over those 2 years. So these prices in front of you reflect those prices for us to remain solid and competitive over the next school year. These are the prices I'm recommending.
Go ahead and state the prices.
Okay, sure. Elementary breakfast, $1.95. Elementary student lunch, $2.85. A secondary breakfast, $1.95. Secondary lunch, $3.05. Adult breakfast price, $2.05. Adult lunch price, $3.55.
And you also, when you figure that out, there's a formula that you have to go with to put all that in.
So there is. So the USDA has a memo 392011 that goes over meal price equity index, and it basically tells us where the recommendation should be. Our recommended prices should be at $3.18 over an average for our lunches. Now, we would be required to meet that if we were losing money. And so since we're not, it's just a recommendation, that's where we should be. But since we're below that and we're still averaging the lowest cost and the lowest prices in St. Charles County, I do think it's still good that we raise our prices to make sure that we remain solvent for the future.
Any other questions?
How much higher than last year's was this? You may have already said that.
No, it did not. This is 25 cents increase.
25 cents all across the board?
Correct, across the board. We are that far low comparatively to everybody else where we need to be.
Increase, that's a lot lower than what I thought you were going to say.
And it's still the lowest in the county, so that's impressive.
Correct. We always try to be at that standard if we can be, and we worked hard doing that.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
I need a motion to approve the lunch and breakfast prices for the 2022-23 school year. Mr. Christopher, second. Mr. Marion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm sorry.
I'm going to continue.
Okay, so this next is, we take each individual one of these bids to be recommended on. So I'll start with the beverages. Beverages, we received 2 bids back, Pepsi and Cole Wholesale. Cole was eliminated because they didn't bid on 4 categories of the 11. Pepsi's been our primary vendor for the number of years. Their price is a 4% increase, which is pretty low considering what prices increased. They also give us 32 refrigeration units free of charge they use in our secondary schools for refrigeration for the students. So I'm recommending we continue our business with Pepsi for the 22-23 school year.
Also, if you could touch on, it was probably challenging to get a lot of the bids with what's going on.
For sure. So in the markets, everything is right now is gravitating towards grocery stores and food eating out. schools is just not much of a moneymaker for all these businesses. So a lot of times we're not getting bids. Coke didn't even bid us this year because they're just, like I said, they're just looking for more money. So we're thankful, and we keep, this is a partnership with these people. So we work with them. They understand where we are with them, but they still want to give us competitive pricing. So it is definitely a partnership, and I've worked with a lot of these people for a number of years, and I work hard at trying to get best pricing we can and for our kids in the district.
Do you want to take each one of these? Okay, so I need a motion to approve Pepsi, contract with Pepsi. Second, Christopher, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed?
Grocery, we received one bid, Cold Wholesale, based on things we just kind of said earlier, that there are just not many people in the business of providing food for schools. Their prices was 11% increase. CPI index was an 8.3 increase over last year. And then with their increases and their labor costs and their food costs, I thought that was reasonable. So I'm recommending that we continue our relationship with Cold Wholesale for the 22-23 school year.
I need a motion to approve Coal Wholesale. George, second Christopher, all in favor say aye. Any opposed?
Okay, dairy, we received two responses, Prairie Farms and Coal Wholesale. Prairie Farms was the lowest bid, $587,000 versus $640,000. I recommend we continue our relationship with Prairie Farms for the 22-23 school year.
I need a motion to approve Prairie Farms. Mr. Helms, Mr. Christopher, all in favor say aye. Any opposed?
Bread was received by two vendors, Coal Wholesale and Bimbo Baking. Coal Wholesale's price was with $82,692. Bimbo Baking was $116,781. I'm recommending we accept the lowest cost of Coal Wholesale for the 22-23 school year.
Go ahead,
You
Eric.
can't do that. It made me laugh. Okay.
Come on, go ahead, make it.
I need a motion to approve Coal Wholesale. Second. Christopher, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right.
Our disposable bids, we do a line item bid, so we take all our items to our warehouse. So we set it out. We have received 4 different vendors, Coal Wholesale, Daxwell Roll Paper, and Imperial Paper and Bag. Like I said, those are line item bids, so I'd like to recommend all 4 companies, Coal Wholesale, Daxwell Roll Paper, and Imperial Paper and Bag, for our 4 businesses that we do business for the 22-23 school year.
I need an approval for the 4 disposable vendors, Marion and Helms. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed?
The pizza, we only received 1 response, Domino's, which has been our relationship with us for several years. Increase is 3.3%, and the total bid price was $33,523. I'm recommending we continue our relationship with Domino's for the 22-23 school year.
We need a motion to approve Domino's, the vendor, Mr. Christopher and Mr. George. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right, and last.
Lastly, apparel, we received 2 responses, VG Promotions and Safeguard Forms and Systems. Based on estimated usage, VG Promotions was $8,084 and Safeguard was $9,770. Based on our lowest cost and continued relationship, I'm recommending we accept VG Promotions for the 22-23 school year.
I need a motion to approve the promotions. Mr. Helms, Mr. Christopher, second. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul.
Can I just mention too, I just want to say a shout out to our staff. We served over 12,000 meals a day, and our average is usually about 8,000. And that was with either same amount of staff or less, based on all the employee vacancies we have and some people calling in sick. But they did a fantastic job feeding the kids in the district that many more meals than free meals. I wish we could have free meals again. I think that was something that was awesome. I was lobbying for that with all our congressmen and senators. I sent letters to them, and but I know that fell on deaf ears. But I just again, our staff did
Was the
a
vote
wonderful
final
job.
that they?
Yeah, it never progressed past the Senate. So.
It's too bad.
Yeah, because I think that was the opportunity to do it even now for next school year. So, again, we'll keep advocating for our kids' children's nutrition. Thank you very much.
Well, everybody's getting applause tonight. Great. Okay, next item is, I've been asked to kind of review the board priorities system, the way it's set up. We are going to have, or I'm recommending to the board, a board priority for bullying, to look at bullying as it is understood in our school district. Board priorities are evaluated in July, and in August, board priorities are recommended to the board. The board usually has a month to look at the ones that I recommend, and sometimes they might want to tweak it, sometimes they may want to change things or add to them, but generally there's 8 to 10 priorities that I recommend every August. They are generally issues that the Board of Education wants to focus in on. Over the years, and I've been here a long time, but when I came, board priorities were being recommended. And over the years, our gifted program grew out of a board priority. All of our at-risk programming, including Hope High School, grew out of a board priority on at-risk programming. And even the Grow Your Own Teacher program, where you met the recipient this evening, that grew out of a board priority. So there are things that the board has specific interests in that they want to focus in on for the year. So I will recommend in August priorities to the board. And once they're approved, one of them will be on bullying. And what will happen, just like you heard a board priority this year, number 4 on reading, it's a very similar type of effort that'll be made. It'll be a committee effort. It'll include members of the board. It'll include parents. It'll include staff. And probably in this case, students. It'll be an opportunity for us to review the most current thinking and literature that's out there on bullying. Be an opportunity to hear from expert testimony on the most current programs available. And then it'll be an opportunity to focus in on some recommendations that will come back to the Board of Education in the spring or no later than the summer. That's the way the board board priority will operate. It will be chaired by a district office administrator, which I haven't selected as yet, but that's the way it operates. Does anybody have any questions on that? I mean, they're really good efforts at looking at issues in the district, and just like I said, the 3 items I mentioned, but there's literally been hundreds of these board priorities we've had over the years. And almost all of them will come out with some better thinking about that particular issue. So there's no action required here. That will be one of our priorities that I recommend to you in August, along with another 7 to 10 that I will try to gather from the board what you're interested in before I recommend them. Any questions?
Yeah, I certainly appreciate the explanation. That's exciting to hear because I do look forward to that process. Obviously,
You must want to be on the committee.
well, somebody's got to do it, right? Maybe. But no, I appreciate that. That helps me understand the whole process, and I know that's been something we hear from our parents on. So I just hope that we don't dilly. I know we won't dilly dally. That's a bad word, but I'm anxious to get started quickly in the fall. And I guess we'll see the rest of your recommended priorities next month?
The ones we recommended are August.
Okay.
We'll evaluate the ones that we just finished in July.
Gotcha.
And then recommend new ones to you in August.
Great.
Good?
Thank you.
I will mention too, I've been on a lot of these committees, and the great thing is you have the conversations with teachers, with parents, and having admin involved in it. There's been times that things have come up that they were instantly able to take care of.
Oh, absolutely.
That it was like, oh, we weren't aware of that, or oh, hey, we can solve this right now. And, so the big scope of it, yeah, that will be presented to us as it goes on and the information's gathered and, the recommendations. But I want everybody to realize and know that to me, it's constantly a working thing that's happening, and then if something comes up, you guys aren't like, well, we're gonna wait till we present it down the board. It's immediately, I see everybody, teachers, the admin that have been in the groups, and it's a good it's a good way for things to get solved and for people to be conversating too that need to be, you know, or parents bringing it up and the principal's like, well, we didn't realize that was going on. So it's, you know, I just wanted to bring that point up too.
I think a lot of times, you know, those of us that are so close to things, we take a lot for granted. And it is helpful to have in particular parents involved to find out what is all going on. Because in most cases, there's a lot more going on than people realize. And it just kind of levels the playing field when you get all those people together in a group. So we'll certainly look forward to getting that going as quickly as we can.
I would like to say though, so I think first of all, it's phenomenal. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this thing takes off. But I do think one thing that's really important, like Erica touched on as far as different points of view on this thing, the committee also should be put together by people from a lot of different backgrounds because bullying looks different for different people. And sometimes if you kind of put one point of view on it, no matter how different the angle is, there's a lot of things you'll still miss. So I think we also need to make sure that we have all different, you know, everybody, anybody, as many people from as many different classes of individual or dynamics of individuals at this district, you know, services. So I think that's something we just need to make sure we're considering when we're putting this, putting this committee together.
Definitely make it a priority. All right, if you're ready to move on, we have all of our agreements from those employee groups that hadn't been approved yet. And Henry's going to walk us through those. So Henry, let's start with our computer techs.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Gray. Good evening again, members of the board. You have a memo in your packet from me summarizing the agreements that we came to with Fort Zumwalt Education Association for our 5 remaining groups. Some are just salary related, some are salary and language. First item, we would take these recommendations individually as computer technicians, and the summary is on the cover page of that memo. Supporting documents are kind of contained in the body of the document as well. But for computer technicians, we are recommending 2.75% across the board salary increase for 2023. We did tweak a little bit of language in their existing agreement, which now would allow for a paid lunch, and that language would be incorporated into a 3-year agreement, subject to salary reopener. When put out to vote, 100% of the voting members of the computer technicians voted in favor of that proposed agreement. So if there are no questions, would present that recommendation to approve language and salary agreements for computer technicians.
Any questions? All right, go ahead, Gabe.
I was going to ask you, so you made mention of a paid lunch. Is that what you said?
Yes.
So I'm not opposed to that. I just want to make sure that's something that we'll be able to duplicate for the other individuals who fall in that. So I guess my question is that something we can afford if other classes of employees demand that as well? And it's kind of hard to deny if that standard is set. So that's the only question I have.
Sure. Yeah, and we do right now have, I guess, inconsistent application of that paid lunch. Some employee groups have paid lunch, some do not have paid lunch presently. Dr. Gray, if you want.
Yeah, and that is an individually negotiated group, so that was one of their negotiation points, and they were able to get us to agree to that. But there's other groups that don't include that in their agreement, so we're just dealing with it on an individual basis.
So if and when those groups propose it, we'd certainly consider it.
It just depends on what issues came up, you know how that works.
Within the scope of those negotiations.
Any other questions? Okay, you need a motion to approve the computer tech salary schedule and language.
Motion.
Mr. Helms, Mr. Christopher, second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right.
Second item, which is letter F on your agenda, is crisis counselors and social workers salary. The crisis counselors and social workers was placed on the previously approved teacher salary schedule, as has been past practice. Language, this is a relatively new agreement, so as is typically the case, after we live in it for a couple of years, we come back with some different ideas, and the group did for some additional ideas for incorporation, and so we agreed to 11 items as far as language revision or new language items as are included in your packet. Again, duration, agreed to a 3-year agreement, and 100% of the voting members approved the language as presented in your packet. So I would recommend that you approve that language as presented for crisis counselors and social workers.
Any questions regarding that? I need a motion to approve the crisis counselor, social worker contract for our salary schedule for the 2022-23 school year. Mr. Marion, second. Mr. George, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And the remaining 3 are salary only, so parent educators have a salary schedule, an existing salary schedule, and we agreed to movement for all parent educators on the existing salary schedule, and an additional $499.42 for those parent educators without a step to move. We call that longevity steps, and that total increase results in an additional 2.75%, which is consistent with the way the remaining salary negotiations have gone. And so that would be a 1-year salary agreement. Again, 100% of those voting approved of that recommendation. So I present that salary recommendation for parent educators for your approval.
Motion.
Gabriel, second. Mr. Christopher, all in favor say aye. Any opposed?
Nurses agreed to 2.75% across the board increase for all nurses for 2022-2023. This entails dissolving their existing salary schedule and giving an even 2.75% across the board for next year. Similarly, 100% of the voting members approved. Would present that for your consideration and approval.
Any questions? Need a motion to approve the nurses' salary schedule. Mr. Helms, second. Mr. George, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And then paraprofessionals have the recommendation is for a revised salary schedule, which is included as the last page in your packet. And paraprofessionals without a step to move would receive a 33 cents per hour increase. Again, that is working with that same 2.75% parameter that was applied to the teachers. And 77% of the voting members approved of that. So we'll present that for your consideration.
Any questions? All right, need a motion to approve the para salary schedule for next year. Christopher, second. Marion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Thank you.
Okay, last item under new business, Dr. St. Pierre has some recommendations from the extracurricular task force.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Bragan. The Board of Education approved granting permission for the task force to meet, and we did that on June 14th here at the district office at 9 a.m. and we heard from 2 groups. The first group were our head basketball coaches of our high schools, boys and girls, and they requested a point review, which is allowed for in our board policy that an existing club can request to review the points allocated. Again, the dollar amount per point is negotiated with our Teachers Association, but the points is kind of subject to review and recommendation from the task force and ultimately approval to the Board of Education. The basketball coaches presently have 37 points awarded to that extra pay, extra duty stipend, and they requested us, the task force, to review that. We did that. Task force all agreed that an increase was in order, and we would bring back a recommendation to increase those points awarded for head basketball coaches, boys and girls, from 37 points to 42 points moving forward. And again, that the areas that were affected would be public exposure and student contact hours. So increasing in those two areas. Put a estimate for the fiscal impact there, which would be an additional $5,600 or $700 per coach per year, if approved by the board. The second item is the addition of a high school robotics club. That club has kind of been in existence kind of in an end-around way at West High School, as the board has approved prior trips and heard from results of the robotics club, particularly from West High School. They've been operating under the existing computer club, which is kind of a misnomer. That's not really why that club was originally put into place, but it's kind of morphed into the robotics. Other schools operate under the Technology Students Association Club, or TSA, and we had a request to create its own standalone club for the robotics club, and so we heard from one of the sponsors, and the task force does agree that that would be a good thing for kids, allow the schools to specialize in robotics but not take away from the existing computer club. So this would be an additional, a new club, and the task force recommends 27 points be allocated to this club, resulting in a total stipend of $3,780 per high school. That's pending sufficient interest and participation. The point sheets are also included within your packet, or the proposed point sheet, so you can see how the task force arrived at those point values. Happy to answer any questions as you consider those recommendations.
What do you deem sufficient interest?
So generally we look for 10 or more. Generally we look for 10 or more.
And what happens if it's not 10? Is that amount prorated, or is it reduced, or how is that, or is it just a zero balance at that point? They don't have any access to that money.
Generally, that's the starting point to get a club going, is that we have 10 students who are interested to sign up for that interest to be, to commit to being involved in that club throughout the year.
I know, but I do know attendance can, there are peaks and valleys,
Sure.
interest and things like that. I'm just curious as to how that will be handled. If it's a down year, the robotics club only has 7 people that attend or that are interested. Does that mean that they're not allowed access to that money? Does that mean that part of the money is kept, is withheld, and part of it is distributed to them? So.
We definitely allow for ebb and flow, throughout the year, so it's not a hard and fast rule once we get a club up and running that if it dips a little bit throughout the year, it doesn't mean the club goes away. We allow for that to continue.
Thank you for that.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Dr. St. Pierre, what's the present for the football salaries, or are we still on robotics?
So the point, yes, the current point allocation for football is 43
What about head wrestling?
points. Head wrestling is 42 points.
Okay. Thank you.
And the main difference there is number of staff members that are involved in the
The
program.
number of students in the program. No,
Yeah.
I don't know what
For
the
scope
points are
purpose,
recently.
yeah, so this
I just kinda
brings it
wanted to
back,
See
closer.
where that was, and it sounds like it's
It's a longer season, it's a
Yeah.
long season for
More
sure,
dates.
basketball is.
Certainly more games
more
than
events.
football.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Right. If not, I need a motion to approve the extracurricular task force recommendations. Mr. Helm, Mr. Marion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you, and extra duty task force aren't easy.
No.
Comments from the Board of Education? Mr. Marion, if you'd like to start.
Thank you. we heard from a lot of people in task force, including extra duty task force and all the committees that worked on reading and math. And, you know, once again, we commended them while they were presenting, but I always want to take extra time to know that all of our staff that put in a lot of extra time just above and beyond what people typically think, and those are good examples. So you need to always keep that in mind. We have some good people that do a lot of great things, so thank you all very much for that.
Mr. George?
That includes the administrator. Don't forget about you either.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the new math and reading curricula in action. Thanks for everybody who worked on those. I mean, you guys put in a lot of good work on that. And thanks for all the teachers that come out here. All the work that you guys do all the time, it doesn't go unnoticed. It makes us look good, makes the administration look good. Shine, I should say, not look good. Just thanks.
I appreciate all the time you guys put in. You know, the committee, like Jeff said, a lot of times, you know, the different committees get some of the accolades, but they gotta have your guidance. And I just think tonight was a good demonstration that good things are going on. And it's a never-ending battle, and you've gotta keep moving forward. And I think Zumwalt has done a good job of that, and I, you know, I want to continue.
Again, well, first of all, I want to congratulate Jacob Stropman again. I think that's phenomenal. He got that scholarship, and I'm looking forward to, hopefully, my kids might be lucky enough to run across him as a teacher before they get out of here. Also, I want to thank Jeremy Moore. Thank you for your time you put in with the active shooter and, you know, explaining that, because I know a lot of parents are concerned about that. And, you know, you hear there's a lot of stuff on social media, and you know how something gets put out there and it can escalate fast, and it's, you know, and it's not any truth to it. So glad you took the time to explain, as well as Officer Knopf. That's it, right?
Yep.
All right, him as well, and Jim Waters and Will Wagner. You did awesome on your presentations and all the time you put in with the reading. And I'm looking forward to seeing it in action. And maybe I can actually help my kids now with their homework. Heather Krieger and Amy Sand, thank you to them, that group that they put together to change the math curriculum and get more of a cohesive math curriculum going between, you know, as the students move up, and they don't have to keep jumping from pot to pot to pot of understanding. So Paul Becker and his staff, thank you for everything you all have done. You all did phenomenal with, you know, with feeding our kids. And Dr. St. Pierre, last but not least, thank you for all the time you put in with the extracurricular task force and everything else you've done. And thank you to the rest of you. You all do phenomenal. And as like I said, as a parent and a board member, I couldn't be happier. So thank you for everything you all do.
I'm just so excited to see all this come together, because it's been, I don't know, again, I've been talking with you about so many of these things over the years, and we had COVID, and we had all this different stuff, and now it's like all this stuff is happening finally. And there's so many, like you said before, there's so many people that are so passionate about all these different avenues, and it's finally happening, you know, that we're getting to see it come to life. And I just thank you all so much. It's greatly appreciated as a mom and as a board member. And lastly, our district has had a lot of loss in the past week, and so I just wanted to send out prayers to the families, the students, the staff members that are affected by all of it, and know that we're all thinking about you, and should you need anything, we are all here for support. So with that, we will move into closed session under Missouri 610-021, approval of minutes from the last meeting in May, and hiring, firing, promotion of personnel. So we will take about a 5-minute break, and need a motion to go into closed session. Mr. George, second. Mr. Christopher, all in favor, say aye. Oh, roll call. Sorry, roll call.
Gabriel?
Yes.
Jeff? Yes. Tommy?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Here.
Yes. All right. Yeah. All right, is there anything else?
I want to email them. Just let them know.
Okay. I need a motion to adjourn. Mr. Helms, second, Mr. Christopher. Roll call.
No.
All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
We're good.